One of the things we want to be familiar with is interval notation. So it's a type of notation to express numbers on a number line. So I'm gonna go over a few different examples. So I'm gonna draw some number lines to give you an idea of what's going on. And so I might just draw like a couple of these. I won't get too creative here. Okay, so let's start off with, let's say we want to talk about all the numbers that are greater than 3. Now the way we write that is, as an inequality, is we would say x is greater than 3. But in interval notation, we're talking then about all the numbers then here that are going from 3 to the right. Now we're not including the number 3, but like 3.001, that's included. So we use a parenthesis. Now you may be familiar with an open dot or a closed dot. We use those in graphs as well, but on the number line when we're doing interval notation, we use an open parenthesis. So this interval here, the numbers that we're including, goes from parenthesis 3, so not including the 3, to, and it's going off to the right, to infinity, parenthesis. And so this is how we would express that set of numbers, real numbers, in interval notation. Okay? So you have a parenthesis on 3 because you're not including that. You have a parenthesis on infinity because you can't really stop at infinity. It keeps going on and on and on to infinity and beyond. So infinity and negative infinity, they're always going to get a parenthesis. Okay, so in my next example, let's say we wanted to include the 3. Then we're going to use a square bracket and go off to the right. And we would write this as an inequality, x is greater than or equal to 3. And in interval notation, it would be bracket, meaning we're going to include the 3, to infinity, parenthesis. Okay. So another example. Well, let's say we want the numbers less than 3. So I'm not drawing good parentheses here. So say we want this set of numbers. Now, the way we would write that as an inequality, we would say x is less than 3. But in interval notation, we read it from left to right, always from smallest to largest. So we're starting at negative infinity, and then we're going up to 3, and then we're going to stop there. Okay? All right, so, and you can imagine what you would do if you had it equal to 3, then you'd have a square bracket on that. All right, so let's give you some more examples of things that occur. So let's say we have a number line, 0 to 3, and let's say we want to include not 0, but we want all the numbers between 0 and 3. Now that's an infinite number, infinite set. You can't list all the numbers that are between 0 and 3, right? Because you have 0.111 and 1/2 and 3/4 and 2.3, you know, you can't list them all. So we would have to express that somehow. Now in inequality notation, we're talking about the numbers between two things, between 0 and 3. So we would say 0 is less than x, and x is less than or equal to 3. Now this time we're including the 3, but we're not including the 0. I made this one up. You could have a set where you included both the 0 and the 3. You could have a set where you didn't include either the 0 or the 3. Okay? Now, in interval notation, though, you read from left to right, so it's going to be parentheses 0 to 3, and then a bracket on the 3 to show you're including that. Okay? I forgot to put a bracket around this. Okay. Now, let's say we have a set of numbers. Let's see, 0 and, oops, and 3 here. And then let's say we want to include all the numbers that are greater than 3, and we also want to include the numbers that are less than or equal to 0. So you read this interval just like you do from the graph, okay? Now what about the inequality notation? you would have to say something like x is less than or equal to 0, or x is greater than 3. You could write it like that. That's how you would write it with the inequality notation. Now for an interval, though, you would write it as from left to right. You're going to say parenthesis, negative infinity, up to 0 with a square bracket. We're going to include the 0. And then we have to skip over the numbers between 0 and 3 because we're not including those, right? So we're going to say union. So stop at 0, include the 0. Now, take a break, and then pick it up again at 3, parenthesis 3. We're not going to include the 3 this time, to infinity. And that's how you would write that in interval notation. Okay? All right, I'm going to do one more example, and then we'll do more practicing when we actually get to some things. So let's say we have 0 and negative 5 and 3 and 1. Let's say we have this. And so let's say we want this set of numbers from negative 5 to 1. And then let's say we want to go from 3 to bigger than 3. Okay? So in the inequality notation, you would say, well, x is between negative 5 and 1. And we're including both the negative 5 and 1 on that. Or x is greater than or equal to 3. So you could write something like that. It's maybe more common to write it, though, with the interval notation. I forgot to say we're including all these numbers. Oops, got to draw the graph there. So we're including all those numbers between negative 5 and 1, and then we're including all the numbers from 3 to infinity. So it would be something like bracket, negative 5 to 1, bracket, union, bracket, 3 to infinity. And of course there's like lots of other examples, but I think that's enough to get us started with the interval notation.